Have you ever noticed how often we confuse freedom with comfort? We're told that if we can buy what we want, say what we want, and live without interference, then we've achieved independence. But what if we're still being quietly controlled by advertising, by social expectations or political tribes, or just our own pursuit of status and security? What if real freedom has far less to do with what we possess and far more to do with who we're becoming? I'm Brandon Jubar, and this is Mythologizing the Bible, where we'll be taking a look at 3 readings from the Christian Bible through the lens of sacred myth. As we reflect on the readings for the 18th Sunday in Ordinary Time, we'll explore how genuine independence grows from intellectual freedom, deepens through inner resilience, and ultimately finds its purpose in serving the well-being of others. In this episode, we're asking a challenging question. Are we living the life we've intentionally chosen, or the one our culture quietly chose for us? Together, we'll discover why freedom begins by questioning what truly satisfies us, why hardship doesn't have to define us, and why the highest expression of independence is found not in standing apart from others, but in freely choosing to strengthen the communities that we share. And before we're finished, I'll leave you with one simple question that may change the way you think about freedom itself. So grab a comfy seat, a glass of your favorite beverage, and let's look at some ancient stories together in this edition of Mythologizing the Bible, where we'll be exploring the readings for the 18th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Cycle A of the Roman Catholic Lectionary. So our first reading is from Isaiah. It's chapter 55, verses 1 through 3. Our second reading is from Paul's letter to the Romans. It's chapter 8, verses 35 and 37 through 39. And our gospel reading is from Matthew. It's chapter 14, verses 13 through 21. Now we'll start by going through all 3 of the readings. Then we'll look for the messages and the main lesson in each one. Finally, we'll bring everything together, look at what it means for us today, and talk about where we go from here. And with that, let's begin. Our first reading is from the prophet Isaiah. Thus says the Lord, come all you who are thirsty, come to the waters. And you who have no money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why spend money on what is not bread, and your labor on what does not satisfy? Listen to me, and eat what is good, and you will delight in the richest of fare. Give ear and come to me. Listen, that you may live. I will make an everlasting covenant with you, my faithful love promised to David. Our second reading is from Paul's letter to the Romans. Brothers and sisters, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. And our gospel reading is from Matthew. When Jesus heard of the death of John the Baptist, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. "Bring them here to me," he said. And he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. All right, so let's go back and take a critical look at these readings and see what learnings and lessons we can find if we dig around just a little bit. So our first reading was from the prophet Isaiah, and this reading opens with an invitation to abundance, but not the kind our culture usually celebrates. Rather than pointing people toward wealth or status or possessions, this passage asks a surprisingly modern question. Why do we spend so much of our lives pursuing things that never truly satisfy? Whether this poem is read as divine invitation or timeless wisdom, it challenges us to rethink what a meaningful life actually looks like. That's a question every generation has to answer for itself. Today we're surrounded by voices telling us what success should look like. Buy this, achieve that, earn more, impress more people. It's easy to mistake consumption for fulfillment or popularity for purpose. But if our goals are being defined by advertisers or social media or the political tribes we belong to or just cultural expectations, we're not exercising freedom. We're just following someone else's script. Real independence starts a lot earlier than most people imagine. Before it's reflected in our actions, it has to be reflected in our thinking. Real independence requires the courage to examine our desires, to question our assumptions, and then to decide for ourselves what's actually worth pursuing. When we stop chasing external validation and we start living according to our deepest values, that's when we discover a freedom that no purchase, no promotion, no public approval can ever provide. True freedom begins by choosing what genuinely fulfills us instead of what the world tells us to chase. So the main lesson I got from our first reading is that freedom begins within. The first step toward independence isn't escaping other people's control. The first step is recognizing when they've been quietly shaping our desires all along. Lasting freedom begins when we choose our own path and when we do it with wisdom and purpose and intention, because freedom begins within. Our second reading was from Paul's letter to the Romans, and Paul's words in this reading have traditionally been understood as a declaration that God's love cannot be separated from those who trust in him. Whether or not someone shares that theological conviction, the passage points toward a profoundly human truth. There's a kind of inner strength that can withstand even life's greatest hardships. Circumstances might shape us, but they don't have to define us. Now, that distinction is at the heart of genuine independence. Many people, too many people, think freedom means having complete control over life. I'm sorry, but that's just an illusion. None of us can completely prevent illness, loss, disappointment, or uncertainty. What we can control is how we respond to those things. We can develop resilience. We can nurture healthy relationships and cultivate values that stay steady even when the world around us is changing. This is where the freedom we discovered in the first reading begins to deepen. Once we've stopped letting society or anyone else dictate what gives our lives meaning, well, then we're better equipped to face adversity without losing ourselves. When we reach that point, our identity doesn't depend on our job title or our possessions or the approval of others or even our current circumstances. Real independence isn't the absence of struggle. It's the confidence that hardship can't take away who we are. Lasting freedom is found in the resilience we build within ourselves. So the main lesson I got from our second reading is that freedom endures hardship. Life will always bring challenges that we didn't choose, but those challenges, they don't have the final word. When our values become stronger than our circumstances, that's when we discover a freedom that remains steady through every storm. Remain steady through everything life throws at us, because freedom endures hardship. Okay, our final reading was from the Gospel of Matthew, and the feeding of the 5,000 is one of the best-known stories in the Gospels. Now, some read it as a supernatural miracle. Others see it as a story about generosity, where one act of sharing inspired an entire crowd to do the same. Whatever happened historically, if it happened at all, the deeper lesson doesn't depend on explaining the mechanics. The story asks, what kind of community do we become when we stop thinking in terms of scarcity and start thinking in terms of shared responsibility? Notice the disciples' first reaction. Right? Faced with a hungry crowd, well, they suggest sending everyone away to basically solve the problem on their own. It's actually a very practical response, but it's also a very individualistic response. The story changes direction when the focus moves from every person for themselves to what can we contribute together? And suddenly the question isn't whether one person has enough, it's whether a community is willing to share what it has. Now that reframes independence in what I think is a very important way. Freedom isn't just the ability to stand on our own. It's the ability to choose cooperation over indifference. A truly free person isn't trapped by fear or greed or the illusion that helping someone else somehow diminishes them. Real independence gives us the confidence to invest in the well-being of others, knowing that healthy communities make everyone stronger. The absolute highest expression of freedom is choosing to use it for the good of others. So the main lesson I got from our gospel reading is that freedom serves others. Our journey through these readings ends with a reminder that freedom finds its greatest purpose in generosity. When we freely choose to share our time, our talents, our resources, everyone benefits because freedom serves others. All right, let's review the lessons we've talked about so far. In our first reading from Isaiah, the main lesson I came away with was freedom begins within. In our second reading from Romans, the main lesson I got was freedom endures hardship. And finally, the main lesson I got from our gospel reading was freedom serves others. Freedom is often misunderstood as simply being left alone to do whatever I want. But today's readings paint a much richer picture. And it starts by questioning who or what is shaping our desires, because a mind that's controlled by outside pressures can never truly be free. From there, it grows into the resilience to face life's hardships without letting those hardships define us. And ultimately, freedom reaches its fullest expression when we choose to use our freedom to strengthen the lives of others. That's the paradox of genuine independence. The more free we are from fear or ego or empty pursuits, the more capable we are of building communities where everyone has the opportunity to flourish. Real freedom isn't an escape from other people. It's the wisdom to live authentically. It's the courage to stand firm in our convictions, and it's the generosity to help others do the same. So let's step back and take another look at these readings overall and see if we can figure out what these lessons really mean to us in our daily lives. To do this, I'll try to answer two questions. So what and now what? Okay, so what? Why should we care about any of this? Well, we should care about this because we live in a culture that constantly tells us freedom comes from controlling other people. Look, that's the promise behind Christian nationalism and every other movement that tries to legislate belief or tries to enforce morality through its form of morality through political power. But today's readings point in a very different direction. Lasting freedom isn't something a government can grant or take away. Lasting freedom begins with us. When we anchor our lives in deeply held values instead of external control, when we discover a kind of independence that no election, no law, no political movement can truly possess. That's when lasting freedom begins. This is important because these readings shared a very different message than the one promoted by our hyper-individualistic culture. And we're often told success means taking care of ourselves first and just hoping everyone else catches up, I guess. But the feeding of the 5,000 challenges that assumption. Healthy communities are not built by hoarding resources or by allowing individuals to hoard resources or by waiting for someone else to come and solve the problems for us. Healthy communities are built by ordinary people who freely choose to share what they have, to cooperate, work together, because our own well-being is deeply connected to the well-being of our neighbors. We should care about this because too many of us, far too many of us, are pursuing the wrong frickin' things. Isaiah asks a question that may be even more relevant today than it was thousands of years ago. Why do we keep investing our time, money, and attention in things that never satisfy? Modern advertising, social media, endless consumerism, they're designed to keep us feeling incomplete so that we'll keep scrolling, we'll keep buying, we'll keep comparing ourselves to everyone else. Real freedom begins when we step away from that noise, when we reclaim our attention and choose a life that's guided by purpose instead of constant consumption. That's not just good for our wallets. It's essential for our mental health and for our independence. All right, the last question I'll try to answer is, now what? What are we supposed to do? Well, we need to remember that freedom isn't measured by how many choices we have. It's measured by whether those choices are truly our own. Every day we're influenced by advertising, social media, political rhetoric, the 24-hour news cycle, cultural expectations. The question is whether we're consciously choosing our path or simply following the one someone else has laid out for us. So with that in mind, here's your question for the week. Where am I confusing comfort with freedom? That question invites us to look beyond the surface of our daily lives. Our habits, our purchase, our priorities, our relationships, are they helping us become the people we want to be? Or are they just keeping us busy and distracted? I remember facing a bit of a crossroads about 20 years ago while I was working as an IT contracts negotiator for Delphi Automotive Systems. I had a good job. I had a comfortable income, and I was recognized as one of the company's experts in negotiating large IT contracts. From the outside, everything looked exactly the way a successful career was supposed to look. When I was unexpectedly passed over for a promotion that I had been preparing for, that they were grooming me for, obviously I was disappointed. But honestly, I still had a great job. I could have stayed right where I was for years and lived a very comfortable life. And that's exactly what I did for a while. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something important. I wasn't living the career I had chosen at that point. I was living the career that circumstances had gradually chosen for me. So with the help of a mentor, I took a 2-year developmental assignment in human resources. It wasn't the obvious choice, and it certainly wasn't the comfortable choice. In fact, it did not unfold the way I had planned, but it was my decision. Looking back, that one choice opened doors I never could have predicted, and eventually all those doors led me to the U.S. Department of Labor, where I had an even more meaningful and fulfilling and an even more successful career. Looking back, I think that's what Isaiah is getting at. Freedom isn't simply having a comfortable life. It's having the courage to ask whether you're pursuing a life that genuinely reflects your own values, or if you're living a life that someone else quietly designed for you. I realize that true freedom isn't comfort. True freedom means having the courage to become the author of your own life. So here's our question again. Where am I confusing comfort with freedom? Taking time to honestly answer this question can help you reclaim your attention. It can help strengthen your resilience and become more intentional about how you use your time, energy, and resources. That's where genuine freedom begins, and where it finds its greatest purpose in serving both your own well-being and the well-being of others. Well, before I wrap things up, I'd like to leave you with a thought from the Stoic philosopher Seneca. Seneca wrote, "No person is free who is a slave to their body, a slave to their possessions, a slave to their ambition." Now, that's a powerful reminder that freedom isn't just about what we have. It's also about what has control over us. We may think we're independent because we can buy what we want, or chase promotions, or build a certain lifestyle. But if our happiness depends entirely on those things quietly become our masters. So as you reflect on this week's question, ask yourself, what's really directing your life? Are your choices driven by your deepest values, or by comfort, status, fear, or by the expectations of others? Real independence begins when we reclaim that authority for ourselves, when we choose purpose over possessions, when we choose our values over external validation. When we do that, we don't just become more resilient, we become genuinely free. All right, we've come to the end of this episode. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back again next week, but in the meantime, I encourage you to engage with our question for the week. Where am I confusing comfort with freedom? Answering it can help you become more intentional about how you use your time, energy, and resources. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Mythologizing the Bible, as we did a deeper dive into the readings for the 18th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Cycle A of the Roman Catholic Lectionary. Remember that real freedom is the wisdom to live authentically, the courage to stand firm, and the generosity to help others do the same. The Bible readings used for this episode are from the Holy Bible, New International Version, NIV, copyright 1973, 1978, 1984, and 2011 by Biblica Inc., used by permission, all rights reserved worldwide. Thank you again for listening. If you like this content, please consider telling a friend about it. The more people who hear the positive messages I'm sharing, the better. Mythologizing the Bible is a live-streamed series held most Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find it on twitch.tv/thecodaproject. Mythologizing the Bible is part of the overall values-based approach to life that I focus on at thecodaproject.com. I also publish the Weekly Compass, other blog posts about living a life that's aligned with your core values, and I share ways that you can become politically active from the comfort of your own home. To learn more, to subscribe to my mailing list, and to keep up on everything I'm doing with the Coda Project, please visit thecodaproject.com.